Hello. Thank you for joining today's broadcast. My name is Dr. Gregory Leskin, and I serve as Director for Military Families for the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. It's a real honor and privilege to be here today.
For 0 to 3. By any chance, have you noticed that your child is having maybe a few more outbursts than before? Or you feel like you're constantly dealing with your child's feeling overwhelmed with emotions? As this pandemic, with all of the recommended restrictions continues, you might find that everyone in the house is having just a little bit of a harder time refraining from reacting to every situation as if it's the worst thing in the world to ever happen. Why is this? Well, stress has what we call an accumulative effect. Alone, each stressful event might be fine and manageable, but add them up, and one very small thing can end up being the tipping point. Sure, not having the socks you wanted to wear today isn't that big of a thing, right? But on top of the rest of what might be going on in a young person's life, it might cause a reaction way out of proportion to not having the right socks. What you don't see while all of this is going on is how the brain is processing the information. You see, our bodies are born with lungs that can breathe and a heart that pumps the blood through our bodies, our kidneys and livers that clean out our blood, and so on. But the brain, well, that's different. It's still developing when we're born and doesn't really reach its full adult growth until you're in your 20s. Let's use our hand as a model for the brain. This was taught to me by Dr. Dan Siegel, and I have his website for you to kind of refer to if you want to check out more of his work. He's really a brilliant guy. And this brain model, kind of if you think about the wrist here area, that's like the brain stem. And that comes on board first. And what that does is it controls our whole body's central nervous system, our breathing, our heartbeat, and all of that. The next thing that develops is our limbic system, and you can represent it by the thumb here. And that really is kind of like our autonomic nervous system. Our limbic system really is our feeling center or our emotion center. Kind of all of our feeling reactions come here. It's where all of our impulses come from, like, ooh, I'm hungry, or ooh, I'm mad, or ooh, I'm scared, I'm angry. All of that comes from this limbic system. And the last thing to come on board is our prefrontal cortex, this part of our brain, or our thinking brain. If you notice, the limbic system, or the emotion center of our brain, touches every part of our brain. It influences all of our actions, because when we think we're in danger, our limbic system says danger, and it makes our base of our brain, our hearts beat faster, our digestive system slows, our breathing gets more shallow, our thinking becomes less clear, our memory disappears. And that's for adults. What Dr. Siegel likes to say is, when we're experiencing stress in our lives, or our limbic system is like on overdrive, what happens is we literally flip our lids. We get disconnected from the thinking part of our brain. As grown-ups, we know what to do when this happens, right? We can take a deep breath and focus on slowing our breathing. We can tell ourselves it's going to be okay, and actually picture in our minds the different outcomes based on our behaviors. If I do this, I know this is going to happen. If I choose that, then that's going to happen. That ability to kind of calm ourselves, that's our parasympathetic nervous system at work. It's reconnecting our thinking brain, our prefrontal cortex, to our feeling brain, our limbic system. And this helps us to get our lids back in place where it belongs, where it can connect and kind of control the actions that we do. Now, children, they really, especially young children, they don't really have the ability to think of what will happen next if they continue fussing, or if they're screaming at you as their parent, or if they're throwing a full-blown tantrum and like destroying their toys or anything like that. They don't think about the consequences for their actions. They simply feel all of the emotions that they've accumulated. For infants and toddlers and young children, it's even harder because they really don't have that ability to calm themselves down, or their parasympathetic nervous system is just beginning to develop. It's not there when they're born. They have to develop it over time, and actually doesn't fully come online until they're in their 20s. They need a grown up to help them until they're really well into elementary school. And even adolescents may need some help just calming themselves and thinking clearly about what might be happening, or that parasympathetic nervous system. So, what can you do to help a child when they get flooded with these emotions and they're in the midst of throwing a tantrum and on the floor crying and or yelling and screaming or just having a tough time? How do we help them find their calm? Well, what we want to think about, rather than scolding them or yelling at them, is we want to help them figure out how they can connect their thinking brain back to their feeling brain, or lowering that lid.
Exactly. Today, Julia and I would like to discuss with you the concept of parenting mindfulness to cope with the parent stress, as well as parenting stress, especially when our children are having a difficult time calming their bodies, or even, as Julia was just saying, screaming, throwing a tantrum, or not listening at all. If your child is having an emotional outburst, it is very important to stay calm in the situation and not get overly upset or get into an argument with your child. These types of situations might be particularly stressful for parents and can really hijack our typical thoughtful response to our children's needs. These are the vulnerable moments parents can react very strongly to their children rather than respond with thoughtful compassion and effectively convey to their child their ability to soothe, comfort, and protect their child from harm and address their immediate needs. Once the child is calmed down after a fitful storm, parents will have a greater opportunity to discuss consequences for inappropriate or harmful behaviors, model more verbal and expressive ways for a child to ask for what they need, or practice emotional regulation strategies for anger management, including I feel statements or I would like type communication. Parenting is stressful, and parents can face difficulties every day that challenge your ability to stay calm, regulate your emotions, listen to and show compassion to your child's emotional or psychological needs. You may have heard of mindfulness practices or are currently practicing some type of mindful activity, such as daily meditation, walking meditation, or yoga. With continued practice, these activities have been shown to be very effective ways for adults and children to reduce stress, stay calm, as well as to learn to tolerate one's own and others' emotional responses. I hope you see where I'm going with all this. There's a growing awareness that learning parenting focused mindfulness may be a very effective means for parents to learn to deal with their children's emotions, including their intense emotional expressions, as well as the normal life developmental issues and challenges that parents face, including challenges associated with adolescence. Mindfulness practice reduces stress, and there are now research studies to show that practicing parenting mindfulness regularly, as well as during stressful and difficult times, may help improve overall parenting practices, the relationship between parents and their children, and even mental health and well-being of the child or adolescent. John Kabat-Zinn defined mindfulness as the practice of focusing full attention on the present moment intentionally and without judgment. This practice, especially as it applies to parenting, is meant to acknowledge that parenting can be very difficult, complex, and challenging for all parents. That is possible to reduce parents' stressful body response by increasing awareness of and the ability to tolerate others and one's own thoughts and emotional expression without judgment. Parenting mindfulness allows us to become aware of the physical sensations of emotion without necessarily getting too caught up or attached to the meaning of the emotion or many of the associated thoughts that might come up in that context, such as guilt or worry. The stress of a child having a tantrum, for example, will bring up many emotions for a parent, including the need to help the child calm down, trying to figure out what is upsetting the child, as well as feelings of helplessness or disappointment. Parenting mindfulness teaches meditation practices on a daily basis, as well as parenting focus exercises to raise the parent's awareness to practice mindful listening and compassion, to stay in the present moment and address your child's needs much more effectively.
Now, we know that toddlers are known for their tantrums, right? We don't call it the terrible twos for nothing, because young children speak to us through their behavior. They don't have the ability to process what is happening or express all of the deep feelings that they have. They're taking in so much of the world that it's very easy for them to become overwhelmed. When your child tantrums, I'd like to suggest to you that you respond first by trying to figure out what your child is trying to tell you through their behavior. Is he overtired or hungry, or has there been a change in his routine? Or is it simply that she doesn't understand not yet? And when she wants something, she wants it now. Young children don't understand later or if you're good. These concepts come with maturity. It's important to understand that your child will only achieve the level of calm that they see modeled by you, their caregiver. So before you do anything else with your child, take a breath and focus on bringing your own emotions under control. Make sure that you're using that thinking brain and that you haven't flipped your lid and that you're using your feeling brain. You want to use your thinking brain so that you're responding to the situation rather than reacting. The mindfulness techniques that Dr. Leskin shared will be a really big help in doing this. Remember that your preschooler or toddler isn't sophisticated enough to be able to manipulate you or mock you through their behavior. They're simply trying to deal with their feelings, their big feelings, whatever it is, that this must happen. And that's all they're doing. Once you firmly have your own lid attached so you won't react, and you have an idea of what your child is trying to say through this behavior, we suggest you try 3 things. First, acknowledge your child's feelings. Give your child a rich emotional vocabulary so that as they grow, they will be able to express their emotions. And guess what? When you can name what you're feeling, you're helping to move from that feeling brain to the thinking brain, lowering that lid. Next, firmly let your child know that they cannot do the forbidden item or cannot continue to do the forbidden behavior. Limits and boundaries actually help your child to feel safe. Your child needs to have the ability to accept these limits to do well in school and as citizens of the world. So these limits are really important. Finally, show your child what they can do or what they can have in the moment. This helps to teach your child problem-solving skills. Whatever you do, don't simply give in because your child's throwing a tantrum. Your child will eventually learn that they need to accept limits and that the tantrums and blow-ups will become less frequent with your ability to respond consistently and compassionately. It's really important to note here that shame, guilt, and threats won't do anything with your young child except to help them have them feel less safe, which will in turn cause higher stress levels and even more reactivity on their side, which leads to more tantrums. You can learn lots more about this on the app Babies on the Home Front, including articles on helping your child to learn to accept new rules and limits, and actually a video on dealing with your child's tantrum.
Julia and I are planning to provide additional discussion on mindful parenting approaches during our March 11th Military One Source Live Talk, and we hope you'll be able to join us for that. We believe this to be a highly important self-care approach for parents and for effective parenting of children of all ages. We hope you'll join us for these future discussions and learn more about mindful parenting. Listen, we know this is a very difficult and stressful time. If you or your child is experiencing mental health issues, including feeling stress in your body, anxiety, depression, or loneliness, we encourage you to seek out counseling through behavioral health or a military family life consultant. If you require assistance, feel free to call Military One Source at 1-800-342-9647 or check in with your advice nurse at your medical clinic. We have some additional resources that you're welcome to share with your military family community, and they're available here. The greatest strength of a military community is the ability to come together to support, prepare, and share resources to help one another feel part of the community, as well as grow and thrive, especially during times of stress and uncertainty. We certainly appreciate and honor our military families and children and hope you will continue to find daily practices for yourself and your family to stay physically fit, positive, and mindful. Thank you for all you do.